Liss. The name of the program is The Way to Go. I invite you to join me as we explore places to go and things to do. Today we're going eating, and my guest today, you may notice, is dressed a little differently. He's disguised. He's disguised because he's Eric Asimov, who is one of the food critics at the New York Times and the author of a great book called $25 and Under, which is a compilation of, actually, the column that he writes for the Times. He doesn't want to be recognized when he goes into restaurants, thus the hat and the glasses. And Eric, welcome, whoever you are.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Westchester. And so you write about restaurants that are $25 and under. And the key question here is, if you pay more than $25 and go to a restaurant where you're paying 2, 3, 4, 5 times that, are you getting anything more?
Well, you're going to get more expensive real estate to start with. More expensive places will naturally be in Midtown Manhattan. More expensive places. You also have a lot more service. Bus boys, maitre d's, captains. People milling about, seeing to your every comfort.
Not necessarily the size of the portions.
That's true. Some of the places I go to give you huge portions. Sometimes you'll see more expensive types of food, foie gras, caviar. These are things that you will rarely find in the sort of restaurants that I review.
Is the food better?
Not always. It doesn't have to be. Sometimes it's sensational. You've got the greatest chefs in the world working with the finest material. But in the more modest restaurants that I go to, you also have terrific chefs who are doing all kinds of creative things.
So that's the question then. What makes a great chef?
Well, first of all, there's a sense of creativity, a sense of an instinctive taste for different food combinations, knowing what goes with what accents what. I see so many cookie-cutter restaurants where menus are put together for marketing reasons. It's as if we've tested the public and we see that they like roast chicken and they like salmon, and we've got to throw in meatloaf too. And you can write the menu in your own head. A great chef comes up with his or her own combinations, ways of taking standards and changing them subtly to put their own stamp on them.
Now we come to the key question, and I'm sure you've heard it over and over again. How do you determine which restaurant you're going to review? How do you find these finds that are in the book?
The first standard is the cost standard. $25 and under refers to being able to get a meal, an appetizer, main course, and dessert that doesn't cost more than $25. This doesn't include drinks or tax or tip, just the basics of a complete meal.
Do you wander the streets looking for restaurants?
I do.
People give you tips?
I do. Friends tell me, strangers tell me.
Readers?
Readers all the time. People call me up, people email me. Restaurants themselves will write me or call me up, letting me know of their existence. I mean, you learn a lot by walking the streets, but you can't cover every block.
Do you respond if a restaurant says, come in and review me, but how do you go in anonymously if they do that?
Well, I always tell them that I'd be happy to check out their restaurant, but I won't tell them when I'm coming. I won't promise them that I'm coming, but the only contact that we have is on the telephone, through the mails, through the computer. So hopefully nobody knows what I look like.
And how do you keep yourself anonymous? Do you go in alone, with groups?
I try to make it my restaurant experience is much like everybody else's experience. I go with maybe one other person, maybe a small group, occasionally by myself when I just can't arrange for somebody to join me.
Do you have a waiting list of people who say, "Hey, where can I go with you for dinner tonight?"
I do. It's a great thing to be able to offer people a meal on me.
One of the things that won't affect your disguise is how do you keep your trim figure? And you do have a trim figure. I suppose now that
no, I promise you, it's part of my disguise. It's an optical illusion.
But
somebody once told me that you can never trust a thin restaurant reviewer, so I don't like to let the secret out.
But you can't possibly eat everything that's served to you and still stay trim.
No, you're right. And what I like to do when I visit a restaurant is, I don't like to tell people what to order, but we all want to order different things.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the main reason to go in a group, so we can get a range of different selections, and then we share. We all taste from each other's plates. And since I'm doing most of the tasting, I don't usually end up finishing my plate. And
I suppose I'm a born restaurant critic because when we go out with our family, we always pass the plates around. Of course, we never write reviews about them, but
you probably do to each other. You tell each other what you think, and in a sense, you're reviewing the restaurant.
I noticed we were out with a large family for Mother's Day, and people just didn't order what others ordered so that we could all taste from each other.
That's a tradition in many families. In my family, growing up, we all knew that we couldn't duplicate orders. We had to vie and bargain for who gets the turkey.
How did you become a restaurant critic?
Good fortune, I guess. I've always been passionately interested in restaurants and eating, and through college, I guess I had to focus on cheap eating. I became a journalist, and I always tried to write about food. I mean, that was my real interest in going into journalism. Eventually became editor of the Times' Living section, which used to be the name of the food section there. And one of the old criticisms of the Times was that we never covered moderate priced restaurants. And so we decided in the early 90s that we needed to come up with a column. And I just happened to be in the position at the time to suggest myself as the person to write this column, and was lucky enough to...
You nominated yourself and voted for yourself.
Well, I let the others vote.
So you've been doing this about 6 years now?
Yeah.
6 years of eating. 6 years of great eating.
40 years of eating, 6 years of writing about it.
You most of the things that you do, certainly in the book and certainly in the Times, as I observed, you don't do negative reviews. So do you review every restaurant you go to? You couldn't possibly do that.
Not nearly. Maybe about 40% of the restaurants I go to. But the bottom line here is that this column needs to be of consumer service. And if it were a service to people for me to criticize restaurants, I would do it. Ruth Reichel, it's important for her to say, Windows on the World is not worth the price of the menu, if that were true.
Yes.
Most of the restaurants that I write about, on the other hand, most people haven't heard of, so there's no point in me bringing them to their attention only to tell them they were better off never having heard of them. This doesn't mean I never write a negative review, because sometimes a restaurant gets a lot of attention, doesn't deserve it, or it might be in a prime spot, and... You
must be very much aware of the power of the New York Times and the fact that everything that you write is going to affect the lives of a lot of people, both the people in the restaurants and the customers in there. Is that oppressive to you to have that responsibility? It is a great responsibility.
It's not oppressive at all, but it's sobering, because you know that the Times has such a readership that people are going to react to what you say, and for that reason, I generally, after I finish going to a restaurant, I visit 3 times before I write about it. I'll call them and interview the people over the telephone and tell them that an article is coming out so they can prepare, because when people read a review, they tend to flock to this restaurant right away. You've got to warn a restaurant.
I've done that, and sometimes I've had to wait 2-3 visits before I could get into a place that was in there, and sometimes when a really great review comes out, I can wait a year before I go to that restaurant. Give them a time to adjust.
Yeah, people often say that you've got to wait 6 months or so. It's a double-edged sword. It's great for a restaurant to get the business, but it kind of stretches their capabilities, particularly if they're not really a professional operation. And I have to watch that sometimes, because it's great fun to discover a restaurant in the middle of nowhere that nobody's ever heard of before. But if you send hundreds of people in their direction, they can't handle it.
We'll get into some specifics in the book. You talk about they're not able to handle it, but you do find how you can eat inexpensively at expensive restaurants. You do cover that in this book to an extent.
Well, that's everybody wants to go to the best restaurants in town, and you may not be able to afford it, or just choose not to pay the price. And so it's great to find a way to still experience the food and the setting. And restaurants nowadays, they make it easy for you. A lot of the best restaurants in the city continue to serve the prefix lunches, $19.98 these days. But a lot of other restaurants have special deals, and you just have to do some research.
You have to know when to do that. Of course, some of them you can't get a reservation for weeks, if not months.
Sure. A restaurant like Balthazar, for example, has been hot for almost a year now, and you can't get a reservation still for dinner, but you might be able to walk in for lunch. Same at Novu, which is a wonderful place just to stop in and sit at the sushi bar for lunch if you're in Tribeca.
I want to, again, get specific, but first I do want to remind our viewers that we're talking about today about $25 and under, which is the column written by my guest, Eric Asimov, in the New York Times, and also a book now in its 4th edition, updated, which covers the reviews, plus a lot of other things in a very, very good organization. Eric, I suppose $25 and under. How long are you going to be able to write $25 and under? Was it $25 and under from the beginning in 1992?
It started out as 25 and under, yeah. And at the time, it was we were still in sort of a restaurant recession after the late 80s, and only now am I really feeling some price pressure. The level, the economic level of new restaurants in New York seems to be going up. They seem to be charging more money to begin with, and for me, it'll be a sad day if we ever have to change the title, because I've grown attached to it, and it just seems like a good cutoff point.
Is it foreseeable that it's coming soon?
Sure.
It's like the stamps have gone up.
I don't know when it will be, but if prices keep going up, that could happen.
You'll have to change your disguise too, then. There's some terms that you use in here. You call in the book affordable restaurants, and I think that's a very interesting term. And also something in there in your reviews and your roundups and the specific dishes that you cover. You call it a guide to the best, which is all very, very positive. When you talk about a critic, as opposed to a reviewer, a critic, there's an implication of good and bad.
Right.
But this is definitely emphasis on the good.
Well, my job is kind of like the canary in the coal mine. I'm going ahead of everybody else and trying to weed out the bad from the good. And the idea is that we have a limited amount of money to spend in restaurants, and why waste it on bad places? And I think that New York may be the greatest restaurant city in the country, but it also has more bad restaurants than any other city.
And lots of failures too, where they open and they close, and
it's
they open
a
and
very
they
hard business, and I don't think I'd ever want to own a restaurant myself.
Knowing as much as you do. One of the things, as I notice in your reviews, is when you list the best dishes, the price range, the credit cards, the last item in the listing before the texted review is why.
Well, yeah, I try to sum up very briefly what the appeal of a particular restaurant is. As in Hollywood, they say the high concept.
For instance, as I look through this, in this restaurant it says huge bowls of Japanese noodles and soups. That's pretty succinct. Another restaurant,
you have to assume that they're good.
Unusual Sicilian specialties in a turn-of-the-century atmosphere. That's really, you don't have to go very far and just read that. Liss on 11th Street, casual, creative, and bustling French.
Well, I don't want people not to read the whole review, but you try to sum it up. People don't always have time to read the whole thing.
When you go into a restaurant, how do you make what makes a restaurant good as far as you're concerned? What happens first, and how does it develop in your mind?
Well, it's interesting trying to break down the restaurant experience, because I try to keep it as normal as I can. I've heard of other reviewers who will go into a restaurant and order 12 dishes for themselves and walk around and taste each thing. I try to stick with a typical restaurant going experience. And the first thing that you notice is that I notice is the smell in a restaurant. Is it inviting? Is it appetizing, or does it smell like cleanser or something? I mean, it's very revealing.
And what else? Even before you get to the taste, there are other things that you see. A restaurant man once told me, when I asked him what's more important, the ambiance or the food, and he said equal, with emphasis on the ambiance.
Well, I'd have to put it. I mean, the food is far and away the most important for me.
In a dirty, dingy dive with terrible service, great food, would that be a good restaurant as far as you're concerned?
It would be a mixed restaurant. The food. I've just reviewed an Italian restaurant in the Flatiron District where the food is terrific. It's called Ribollita, and the service couldn't be more maddening. And I believe that this restaurant can improve. Certainly the service can. But if the food weren't any good, there wouldn't be any reason to go there.
Right. So the reasons to recommend has to be the food.
You have to start with the food. And I've gone to plenty of dives. I don't equate bad service necessarily with a simple place.
But you do say that good service is important, attentive service is important.
Certainly
sure
it goes into making it a pleasant experience.
When the menus are presented, the check is presented, catching the attention of the waiting.
Yeah, there's nothing more frustrating than feeling ignored and trying to capture the attention of somebody to bring you a menu, bring you a check, or just if you have a question. So, it's incumbent on a good restaurant to pay attention, and it's, it surprises me that more restaurants don't know that.
Be specific. Give us a couple of hints about some pretty good restaurants that you've covered in the book or covered in the column. That not everything, of course, that you've written about in 6 years is in the book. Name a few.
I'll mention one fellow. His name is Jean-Claude Iacovelli, and he has kind of mastered the idea of inexpensive, yet sophisticated bistros. He's got three now downtown. One is called Jean-Claude. The other second is Soho Steak, and the third is Veli. And he not only has he mastered the simple menu, economically priced, yet offering sophisticated, creative dishes, but he creates environments where people feel welcomed, cared for, attended to, and this, to my mind, is a great restaurant, whether it's inexpensive or very expensive.
Is it difficult to get into one of his restaurants because of the quality?
Well, he doesn't take reservations, which is frustrating, not to say annoying, but
Probably because of bad experiences, the people who don't show up. I suppose so many restaurant operators feel that people make reservations and then don't come, and
yeah, they. I mean, that's one reason. The other reason, I guess, is simply to keep it simple. In his mind, he doesn't take credit cards. He doesn't take reservations. People come, and they do fill his restaurants.
Well, that's the important thing. The book itself, you do a lot of reviews in it. You do guides on varied basis. You have a location guide, of course, so that you can go by area, and it's all key to the page number of the review. And then you do what? You know the book better than I do.
Well, we break it down by subject, by cuisine. There are basically three elements to this book: the full-scale reviews of restaurants, and then I've done larger roundups by subject, where to go for the best hamburgers or pizza or breakfast.
And some very
barbecue.
Extensive things that you do in there, which of course you can see quite clearly. Breakfast, you say, pizza, you put in there, barbecue.
Right.
Why did you pick those groups? Most popular?
Well, they're interesting to me, and they're also there tend to be foods that restaurants specialize in. Not so much true with hamburgers, but certainly with barbecue, with pizza, and rather than devote lots of words to each particular restaurant, it made more sense to me to give the words to the subject.
I like particular afternoon tea. Hardly seems to be in keeping with New York.
That was interesting to me because there was a time in the last couple of years when there seemed to be an explosion of places offering tea, and the explosion was coming not from the hoary old hotels on the Upper East Side offering their English teas, but a number of Asian places that were giving Asian accented teas, like the tea box. One of my favorites is the tea box at the Takashimaya department store on Fifth Avenue, which is just a terrific place for lunch and for a quick bite in the afternoon.
How do you account for the popularity of the coffee shops and all of their ramifications? Always
Are
crowded.
you talking about the coffee bars, the Starbucks, or the old-fashioned?
The Starbucks.
Well,
is it a fad? Because they charge more than a cup of coffee that you can buy everywhere else, and they're crowded. They're always crowded.
I don't think it's a fad. I think that for a long time we settled for bad coffee, and it was a wonderful revelation to people to see how good coffee could be if you paid more attention to it. Now, this doesn't mean that I appreciate the various blends and styles at every one of these coffee bars, but they also offer congenial places to sit and relax, and particularly in Manhattan, there aren't very many places like that.
I went into a Starbucks, and it was new, and the help was just learning and working off an instruction sheet. And I said, what's the difference between cappuccino and cafe latte?
Right.
And cafe au lait? And she looked and she says, I make them exactly the same.
That's the dirty little secret. But I found one day, I just taking economic inventory, I tried to add up the amount of money I spent on coffee on water. These are things that we used to take for granted, and it was absurd. I don't like spending $3.50 for a cup of coffee at one of these places. I don't do it very often.
When you are not reviewing, can you go into a restaurant and just enjoy it without thinking about how I'm going to?
Well, I hate to lose working time. I mean,
you don't eat
you,
non-professionally.
I never eat non-professionally. At the same time, I still enjoy it tremendously.
Well, I think that you and HarperCollins have done a great job in this book. This book is going to get a lot of use by me. I guarantee that it already has in the 2 weeks that I've had it. And I think it's just great that you've done this. And I think it's wonderful that you are providing this service to the public through the Times and through the book. It's available, of course, in bookstores. I've seen it.
Bookstores all over.
Not only in New York, on the internet as well.
Yeah. It's generally classified in travel in bookstores.
Well, on behalf of my viewers, can I ask, how do I get to go along with you and be one of the diners? And people, of course, can give you suggestions on restaurants that they think that you should go to. Then. And they could reach you at the Times.
Every Wednesday, at least.
Is that when you're in?
Yeah, the 25 and under column is in on every Wednesday. I do another column on Wednesdays on takeout food.
Well, talk about takeout. We've run out of time. And I certainly appreciate your coming here and talking to us about $25 and under, where to eat inexpensively in New York. My guest today is Eric Asimov, who is a food critic at the New York Times, writes the column $25 and under. The book is really fascinating. Get a copy. Enjoy eating in New York. I'm Norman Liss. The name of the program is The Way to Go. Until next week at this time, enjoy yourself.